welcome to the Mums Mean Business interview series with Business Crowd. Today I'll be interviewing Claire Young of School Speakers. So Claire, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. When did you first start in business?
Looking back, I had an entrepreneurial spirit as a child, not even realising. My mum taught me how to use an iron, and at the age of 9 I was paid 50p to do 2 big bins of ironing. But I think at that age I realised that hard work, if you worked hard, you gained results, and I valued money straight away, the value of money. And I sold things at school. You never think about that as running a business as such, but that entrepreneurial spirit, seeing the opportunity, grabbing it, seeing a customer, having the conviction to actually go ahead and have a go at doing something. But when I left university, I had a science degree from Bristol University. I went to all the milk round interviews and I applied for 83 jobs. I was desperate to get a job and not go home and live with my parents after uni. And I left uni with 5 job offers and went to work for L'Oreal, the big health and beauty company. And I can remember being sat at my desk 3 months into their graduate scheme thinking, I'm quite good at business. I got it. I think when the penny drops and you realise you're good at something, it helps. And that really was the beginning of 8 years of working in London, climbing the corporate career ladder, then deciding in 2008 to take part in The Apprentice, which is a huge TV show, and then actually leaving that experience. I can remember seeing a couple of candidates who were taking part, ran their own businesses, and I can remember thinking, well, I'm much better than they are, and if they're running their own businesses, maybe I should have a go. So left that experience with probably the biggest change from taking part was deciding to work for myself as opposed to going back and working for somebody else.
So what were the drivers for you working for yourself? Because you've said obviously you've seen other people and thinking you could do it as well as them. What were the other things that really drove you to want to do that? Had you always seen yourself running your own business, or was it just a light bulb moment for you?
I was quite blinkered when I left university. I think the careers advice and education I'd received when I was younger, but nowhere along the line had starting a business been an option. Didn't particularly know a lot of people who ran their own businesses. I knew a lot of professionals, doctors, accountants, lawyers, bankers, people working in the corporate career ladder, which it is the business world, but it's very different from running your own business and being a small, SME. And I think for me it was curiosity. Curiosity actually leads a lot of my decision making. I thought if I'm interested in something, I'll want to figure out more and go after it. So I was curious about what it'd be like to run my own business. And I think after The Apprentice, I had over 500 job offers sent through to me, but there was nothing which actually really jumped out at me. And I think taking part in The Apprentice was such a significant experience for me. It did completely change my mindset. I felt that in the 5 weeks of filming, because that's how long it took to film the 12-week show, I felt that somebody had lifted my brain up, pulled it apart, shoved it back in, and sent me out the door and said, off you go. And I had a completely different perspective about what I could achieve, what I could do. And for the first time, I'd actually spent a lot of time with people who were running their own businesses. So I left the experience and thought, I've got this great opportunity of PR and free profile that if I don't start a business now, I probably never would. And I think when you have an idea for a business, you know that you are an entrepreneur, where you feel like you don't have the option not to do it. I felt that it was sort of now or never. It took me 2 weeks to decide whether to turn down a very good job offer or to start a business, because it's a big risk starting a business. 7 out of 8 new businesses don't work, but you've got to have that conviction to actually have a go, because I suppose if you don't, you'll never know.
It's really interesting. So describing the experience of being on the show, I'm guessing whilst what everybody saw was quite outward looking, for you it was quite an inward looking process of evaluating your skills, evaluating where you were at against your peers as well, to give you the confidence to go out there and start your own thing, which is very common with a lot of the mumpreneurs that I've been speaking to. They've gone through this transformative experience of having a family, and it's been that's pushed them to launching their venture.
I think there's always a catalyst, and it's usually a big one, whether it's breakup of a marriage or having a baby, a significant age, people turning 40, 30, 40, 50. There's usually something which triggers somebody's decision making, and particularly the lifestyle around running your own business or being self-employed. I think for being a mother of a young child myself, your priorities do change when you have a family, and actually, having the flexibility and having your own autonomy, that has a much greater value than what you might have previously had, which might have been around a certain salary. You do change your priority, but I think there is, you get to the point where you want different things from your life.
That real value shift that comes, particularly as you say, with becoming a parent or a major life change, where you really begin to question the things that drive you.
We talk about the whole women in business agenda, and I comment a lot about it in the press, and I've worked with the government on many initiatives trying to help more women into business, into STEM subjects such as science, technology, engineering, maths, very sort of male-dominated areas. And one of the things which I'm constantly saying is to really have more women staying in the working world, because at a young age, women outperform at school, college, university. Salaries in their 20s indicate they're more successful for men. And it's when women do have children, that's where you have this huge drop-off of women out of the pipeline. The only way it's going to happen is by culture change, and that's by allowing flexible working, job sharing, more understanding that if you leave the office at 5 o'clock to go pick up your children, you're not, quote, working part-time. There's got to be that shift to make it happen. If employers want more women, where you've got to be realistic that women do have children and there is shared parenting, but most of it often does fall on women to do. You want those women to stay in your business, there has got to be changing culture about how people are treated.
Absolutely. There needs to be much more open-mindedness, I think, within the corporate world, and less of an all-or-nothing approach. I was having a discussion earlier this week with Lisa Barnwell from Bumps in the Boardroom. Exactly that thing. She's coined the phrase, the pregnancy advantage, because there are skills that women can bring, whether it's negotiation skills that you bring from having dealt with dressing a toddler, which is one of the things that I teach. You can bring those back into the workplace and actually be more effective post-pregnancy and child rearing. It shouldn't necessarily mean a drop-off, and I think more employers do need to wake up to this. One of the barriers, though, for SMEs, and I'm wondering what your views are on this, is obviously SMEs cash flow is an issue, and the cost of pregnancy. What do you think perhaps the government could be doing more to support SMEs when they do have members of staff that do need to take maternity?
Yeah, cash flow is absolutely king, and I'm really glad that you mentioned it, because often when I'm doing interviews about business, people talk about customer and marketing and what I would call the sexy side of the business, but actually you need a really good accountant, you need to understand your accounts, and you need to understand your cash flow. I think the government could be doing a lot more all-round to support SMEs. I think there could be greater access to startup loans, there could be more understanding on tax and VAT payments, because I think all entrepreneurs have been sat struggling to meet deadlines, and actually HMRC often are not particularly flexible on understanding on cash flow. When it comes to pregnancy and maternity, there just needs to be some work done on that, and there needs to be, I think, funding to allow SMEs to cover that cost, whether it's a grant funded or actually the government invests and gives you some money to help your business. But more does need to be done. I think there's lots of personal benefits to being an entrepreneur, but actually when you look at black and white on the paper, the government doesn't offer a single incentive, which is frustrating. I think it's disappointing, because this country desperately needs new business growth. They need wealth generators. They need people who are going to create jobs. And actually, when you look at it on a black and white piece of paper, there are no financial benefits or allowances for startup businesses or entrepreneurs at the moment.
Yeah, I think much more creative thinking is needed, particularly to unlock what I call a kind of latent potential that we've got with women, whether it's because they're excluded from the corporates or it's because they're unable, because of financial constraints, to start a business and actually have a bit of breathing space while they get their business initiated.
Yeah, exactly. My business, we have 8 members of staff and 7 are women, and that's not something which I orchestrated from a feminist point of view or trying to help more women up the ladder. It's just they were the people who applied. But interestingly, my office, we work on flexi time, we work on job sharing, people work from home, so we've got the technology to do it. And as a business, everyone's happy, people stay here a long time, and it works. So I think if my little business can work like that, how come huge organisations where you do see where people have exited a corporate and said the lack of flexibility, the lack of job sharing, flexi working, if we can do it, how come big corporates can't do it?
Yeah, and I think it's innate and it's built in. I mean, I had a slightly different experience in corporate because we were with an organisation that was promoting flexible working from about 20 years ago. It was built in and it wasn't seen as a male-female issue, and I think that was absolutely key to the success because it was an environment where everybody managed their own diaries, deadlines, and actually worked by productivity rather than hours worked, which made a lot more sense. So on to school speakers. Tell us a little bit about how school speakers emerged for you, because it's a really interesting story behind it, Claire.
After taking part in The Apprentice, I was advised to have a personal website, which was alien to me at the time. Nowadays, everyone has websites, but 8 years ago, to have your own website was slightly, I thought it was slightly narcissistic, but I followed the advice and had claireyoung.co.uk built. And the day I left The Apprentice, I was inundated with schools asking me to go in and speak to students, particularly teenage girls. The schools said they were desperate to have role models go in to work with the students, really helping to raise aspiration and work ethic. So I've never been back into the classroom since I actually left school myself. Really enjoyed it. I think for me as an entrepreneur, you get the buzz of creating something, making money, seeing an idea come to fruition. And I can remember leaving the school and having that same buzz, and I was bitten by the bug, so to speak. I started School Speakers really for 2 reasons. But firstly, the volume of work I had, I couldn't fulfil myself and started passing work to other speakers. And I can remember one day seeing a teacher frantically trying to find a scrappy piece of paper with speaker details for a speech day. And I said, how do you find your speakers? And she said, what a nightmare it was, because you take a big risk, particularly for an awards event where you've got hundreds of people there, that speaker is good at what they do, that they're going to connect to the parents and the students, that they're in line with school budget, and they're actually good at what they're talking about. And the idea just popped into my head of, well, if you could find all of these speakers, because I knew through my network about 50 speakers, would you use somebody who put them all under one brand, who vetted them for you and made sure that they were good and in line with your budget? And she said, well, it seems a really obvious thing to do. Why has nobody done that? So I went off, the first thing I did was bought the URL name, schoolspeakers.co.uk for £10, had the website built, did my research that nobody was offering it to schools, and we launched 6 years ago. And 6 years down the line, I'm stood in my office, we've got people working here, got over 300 speakers, we work with thousands of students across the country, and now internationally through word of mouth and the internet, we work with British international schools. So it's proof that an idea from your brain, which sprung up in a staff room, is now a fully operating business, and it's very flattering. We've won lots of awards, and for me, it's a business where I'm very transparent. If I don't enjoy what I'm doing, I wouldn't do it. I thoroughly enjoy the work I do because I love working with young people. I like being involved in education, and I like running my own business. So I'm absolutely delighted that the idea has actually worked.
Wonderful. Well, that's fantastic, and I think that's very inspiring to women who are listening. How would you, what tips would you share with women who are listening, who are thinking perhaps about launching their own business, they're perhaps on maternity leave, things like that? What would you share with them about starting their business? What things do they need to be mindful of?
Well, first, I think you've got to get started, because that's one of the biggest barriers I talk to lots of people who have got this really great idea. I'll ask them what they've done with it. They go, well, I've not done it because I've been doing, my child's been teething, or this has happened, or this has happened. You've got to get started somewhere, whether it's just buying the URL, building a website for yourself, because there's lots of easy programs out there where you can build a website for free through WordPress. They're really simple to do. be on top of your numbers. And one of the things we mentioned earlier, cash flow, making sure that when you do any arrangements with people, it's all documented and you've got terms and conditions and you have very clear payment terms. I know lots of people in the freelance world who do work up front and then they never receive the payment for it. To really think about your payment scheme, whether you can take a deposit from people, but always get everything in writing. And if you're going into business with a partner, make sure you have an exit agreement, because at the beginning of the business, things are always great, but along the lines, things might get bumpy or one of you might want to exit. And I think having an exit agreement, that piece of paper might potentially save you a lot of time and money and heartache down the line.
As an ex-commercial contracts person, I am delighted you have said that, Claire, because it's something I see so many business owners overlooking. It's really important, and it is very, very easy for things to go awry. And actually, if you've got the legal structures and agreements in place, that goes a long way towards making it clear and getting people to do what they need to do in business.
I think entrepreneurs are very, a whole range of shapes and sizes, introverted, extrovert, but the common theme is people very passionate, they've got a can-do attitude, which is fantastic, but sometimes people dive off with an idea, they don't have the right structures in place, the company's not set up properly through the company's house, they don't have any agreements, exit agreements in place, and they don't cost a huge amount of money, you can download them for free off the internet, but making sure, I compare it to a hot air balloon in a basket. Some businesses have got this big air balloon floating off and it's growing and it's fantastic, but underneath they're scrambling around, they don't have the structures, they don't have the basket in place, so to speak. I think in listening is something which I really took on board from taking part in The Apprentice after a ferocious dressing down from Alan Sugar. But it's really important to listen to your customers. With school speakers, we are constantly out there. I'm out in schools once a week, talking to teachers, seeing what's actually happening in schools, reading the newspapers on trends with Ofsted. And after any event, we always send a follow-up email to get feedback on the speaker and what they felt went well, what didn't go well. You know, I think lots of entrepreneurs never want to be told that their baby's ugly, so to speak, but your customer could give you a really vital piece of information. So listening, you might not like what they're saying, but take it on board because it really could help shape the future of the business.
Absolutely. Feedback in a business, and particularly in the early days, is a gift. And actually, some of those light bulb moments can come from things that customers have noticed as well.
Exactly. I think it helps having, I wouldn't say I have a mentor as such anymore, but I had a mentor in my corporate career, which was given to me from 21, and in every company I worked for, I asked for a mentor who was almost a bit like my personal cheerleader, helping me and somebody who I'd talk to. But I now have a range of people who I can talk to about different things, who I know have got expertise, skills and knowledge, and it often helps when they've got no idea about education or they're not too close to the subject. So when I ask them a question, they can give me a completely different view or opinion, and I think that's a very valuable thing to have. I think entrepreneurs are very good at asking for help and using all resources available to them for free, because I see lots of people who I work with, they have fantastic ideas, they spend a fortune at the beginning of a business, and you don't need to spend that amount of money. You know, you've got to remember every time you spend something, you're eating into your profit line. Be very, I always think, before you spend money, maybe give yourself 5 days to actually ask yourself, do you really need it or do you want it? Because there's a difference between need and want.
Yeah, and what are you trying to do in terms of a measurable outcome? Because there may be a different way to achieve.
Exactly. Lots of my emails to people start with, can you help me? There's nothing wrong with asking for help. The worst that somebody can ask is no. I think I learned that during The Apprentice, when you're on ridiculous tasks with these crazy time scales that actually don't have the time to even query and think, well, what happens if they say no? You just pick up the phone and you are straight away ringing and talking to people. And it's amazing when you take that ethos into your own business, what you can achieve in a day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do you think being focused on one thing particularly as well is something that helps with businesses? Because, you know, some of the people I'm talking to at the moment that are in those early stages, you know, one of the things I recommend is they take, you know, a day in the week for prospecting, a day in the week for doing the strategic stuff in their business. How do you tend to chunk your time down?
Exactly. very focused on. I've had lots of time management training in my corporate life, and it's about the static effect doesn't work, it doesn't get results. And for me, I have to block out time every week. I have 2 hours where I'm looking at accounts, cash flow, chasing outstanding invoices. And as a business owner, that is your responsibility. Don't pass the buck to somebody else. If your cash flow stops, your business will stop. So for me, that's a top priority. I have Monday and Friday when I'm working internally in my office. Tuesday I will have as a meeting day as such if I need one. One day, Wednesday or Thursday, I'll be in a school. So I have, for me, a very structured approach to my work because, for example, I've taken emails off my phone because if you're dipping constantly in and out, for me, it's not productive. If I commit my brain to something, I commit it 100%. And if I'm dipping in and out of phone calls and emails, that doesn't work.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs need to learn to manage is the many different ways and challenges that they have around ways of being contacted. Make it one route for each thing, cross-direct things so that you've got a clear flow of what's coming into the business, what you need to deal with through your standard operating processes and what's going out. What I see is a little bit of, certainly normally startups involve me when they've been going for a couple of years, and that's when they get to what I call the gangly teenager stage. Going very intuitive has worked for the first couple of years and they've had some success, but then they hit a block because they need to actually get the structure and processes in place if they've not been there from the foundation stages.
I think as well people run out of energy because having a startup business, this business is now 6 years old and we're at a stage where the structures are in place and the operations, and we run like clockwork. But the first 2 years of a business, there's no easy way around it, are really, really hard work. So I take my hat off to anybody who's doing it alongside having a baby, because my daughter was born when my business was 3 years old. But where there is a phase where there is a will, there's a way. And there is nothing worse a phase than a busy fool. I see lots of people who are working frantically and they're working long hours, but there's lots to be said for working smart and prioritising, cutting out the crap, as I would say, and really focusing on, think about yourself as a physics equation. What are you putting in and what do you get out? And being realistic about the time which you have. If you have 20 working hours a week when you've got no children, when you actually can focus on your work, be realistic what you can fit into 20 hours. There's no point trying to ram in 80 hours of work because you'll always fall over into the next week. You'll have this ever-to-do list. You'll end up feeling rubbish. You'll end up hating your business. Take small steps because the small things will actually build up to big things, and that's when you'll feel good about yourself. I think for lots of entrepreneurs, you've got to really remember to be in love with your business. And you'll have points where you get sick of it and you look at your computer and you think, why am I doing this? That's when you need to red card yourself and get yourself away from the computer. I don't know, whatever it is for you, going for a walk. For me, I ride my horse or go watch a film, and actually maybe take a couple of days off from your business and give yourself time to recharge and then get back into it.
Absolutely.
I see lots of people worn into the ground, and that's when they get to the point where they walk away from potentially quite a good business.
I think it's one of those things, if you're going to be with your family, be with your family fully. If you're taking rest, take rest fully, because then you can come back reinvigorated and recharged. And actually, because you've taken that mental break, the creative part of your brain works so much more effectively when you do come back into the business.
Exactly.
There's a lot to be said for that. So it's been really, really great to talk to you, Claire. Is there anything else that you'd like to just add as a final word?
No, if anybody wants to get in contact with me, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Claire L. Young. Or if you want to contact me, my email's on my website, claireyoung.co.uk. But thank you, it's been great and it's been nice chatting.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to speak with you, and thank you for sharing so much in such a short space of time. Thank you.